My father was sort of a strange man. He would catch strange fish that had parts where there should not be. Crabs that did not have claws, fish with strange lesions on their scales, or extra eyes, or none at all. He would bring these things home, and he would show them to us, but that would not stop him from fishing. Some looked like new breeds. I guess they sort of mutated, but mostly the fish looked like they had been born wounded. I guess that's how most of these things happen. It's not like in the comic books. They don't glow in the dark after. Most of the things that happen to fish are on the inside. Their organs don't work right, or their hearts are malformed. A whole bunch of them are born blind. They can't spawn, reproduce. Then all of a sudden, their generations don't take long. A whole species just drops out of the food chain. They say the whole world is getting less diverse now. Fewer species. I remember when it all started, at least when it really started to get worse. I was just a kid when the big floods started. There had always been floods, of course, but not the big ones that would take out roads and rewrite shorelines. When the storms started coming, all of them hurricanes, one after the other, suddenly you had places that had never flooded getting hit. I used to spend a lot of time down in the basement. Money was tight in the recession, and sometimes Mom and Dad would argue. And it seemed like a safe place. I remember one night I was down there painting things, scenes of things like I sometimes did, listening to the rain, and the walls did crack, and the water seeped through. And the water had a strange smell to it. It got worse and worse over time. There was a lot of flooding and a lot of mopping. He must have gone through 5 sump pumps. By the time the inspector said we had to move, the house itself was at a strange angle, like the Leaning Tower of Pisa or something.
Mudiwa in Kenya and Newark died of carbon monoxide poisoning from a diesel generator that was placed too close to the open window of their apartment. The open window created a vacuum effect that pulled the smoke in as they slept in the cold room. They died in their sleep and were found cuddled together in Kenya's bed. Mudiwa in Kenya and Newark died of carbon monoxide poisoning from a diesel generator that was placed too close to the open window of their apartment. The open window created a vacuum effect that pulled the smoke in as they slept in the cold room. They died in their sleep and were found cuddled together in Kenya's bed.
I used to come out this way to try and catch fish. I pulled perch, striped bass, a lot of good eating fish. Nowadays, of course, with the contaminants, they say it ain't safe. I never know what to believe. It's a powerful river, can wash a lot of stuff away. Not right now, of course. I mean, look at it. After a hurricane, there was no point in fishing with all the sewage and debris. So what am I doing here? I ain't fishing for fish. I aim to get some furniture. Now, most of your contemporary pieces, like that recliner there, are useless when you pull them out. But a lot of folks around here had antiques, period pieces, stuff they got handed down. Like, look, that dresser there, I'm gonna try to snag it. I gotten some great pieces. Damaged, sure, but not past refinishing. My garage is full of this stuff. And once they're in the river, they don't belong to anybody, you know? Yesterday I pulled out a captain's chair, must be 200 years old. And once these people come out of the camps, back into the high ground settlements, once they start to rebuild, they're going to be looking for furniture, you know? I figure it's like a harvest in a way. Once the stuff dries out, it doesn't smell so bad. Sanded, new coat of furnish, like new again. Get lemons, make lemonade.
Around the time of the first big hurricane in 2012, we figured it was just a freak thing, one of those 100-year, whatever, 200-year events. And we were lucky around here, really. A little flooding, so what? The Schuylkill floods at least twice a year. You clean up and get on with it. What we got here was like an ordinary event, basically, not like what hit them in New York or on the Jersey Shore. Of course, nobody could anticipate these things would start coming regular, that the East Coast would start having hurricane seasons, just like those poor people down in the regulated territories in Florida and what used to be New Orleans. Now, there's a lot of places that used to be places and are places no more. A lot of evacuation zones that will never dry out again. Do you remember Atlantic City? We used to have so much fun. The boardwalk.
The Prometheus? It was a big tanker, single bottom, double-sided, 750 foot, filled with crude, and we was towing it into berth number 11 so they could deliver the crude to the Citgo asphalt refinery in Paulsboro. The tug captain noticed it first, the oil in the water, and he says, "Oh shit, Frank, I think got a problem here." Cypriot ship, it had 13 million gallons of the stuff on the manifest. We notified the USCG right away. A few minutes later, the tanker lost power and you could see it listing about 8 degrees on the port side. And all that stuff was just pouring out. You could see it separating in the water, tar sinking down, and the light stuff shining on the surface, and the smell of it in the water was like blacktop and dead fish. You hardly ever think about what's in those boats, but what we delivered to the asphalt refinery is real raw stuff, thick gunk that settles on the river bottom. I don't know, you could say it was anybody's fault. There was an old anchor in the water and a 15-foot piece of old pipe, and concrete slabs, enough debris to tear open the belly of a ship. Where it came from, who knows? Some things fall off and never get reported, other things wash in. And all these old factories. There's a lot of material down there people don't appreciate. It's a big river with a lot of old junk on the bottom. You do your best to navigate, but you know God rolls the dice, don't he?
By the mid-teens, nearly everyone agreed that spending on FEMA was way out of control and they needed to be put on a leash. The whole budget can't be disaster relief, and when you've got 4, 5, 6 canes tearing up the coast every year, you can't bail everyone out every time a storm hits. Sometimes it's like tough luck, you know? You should have built on high ground, right? They ran out of other people's money, and then they ran out of trailers, and then they ran out of rations. And that's when things got really complicated.
George was an unsuccessful painter and sculptor born in Hungary during the middle of the last century, and his brother remembers that the Danube flooded over its banks each spring near where they lived, and that both boys were terrified of the power of water. He couldn't understand why George, nevertheless, chose to live in a little bungalow that sits alongside the lagoon in Brick Township. George didn't drive, and he rarely left home. Neighbors said he lived like a hermit. During the storm surge, the floodwaters washed through the bungalow, and George drowned.
The snake-eyed fish come up out of the marsh waters and crawl across the land. Those fish bite, and there may be some kind of sign. Their mouths are full of dagger teeth, and they can squirm across the mud. Some can weigh 30, 40 pounds. They'll clean out just about any pond they find until there's nothing else left. And they'll bite humans too if you've not got boots on. They aren't bad to eat, but they aren't sweet like trout used to be. And they are nasty, ugly fish. I'm not complaining, but it bothers me some that all we got left are the nastiest fish, and that it's the meanest fish that survive when everything else goes to pot. It's the type that kill everything in their path that live the longest. I fear everything is dying, and every place is less for it. Mom fought it for a long, hard time, but then her will gave out. These last years of watching all my folks die and all the land go bad around me have taken such a toll on me that I'm as likely to give up as I am to carry on. Sometimes I think it is all a dream, but then I pinch myself so hard I get little welts on my arms, and it pains me to say I find myself still in the same McMansion next to the same McSwamp. I rigged up an old shopping cart and a folding table with some straps, and on this I will bear her away to a proper burial place.
Mary Lou taught business at Bound Brook High School and lived in Middlesex Borough. She loved mysteries, antique china, roses, and azaleas. She fell in the dark and was found dead at the bottom of the basement stairs.
Climate change? Of course there was climate change. Now, that's obvious. But all these people who spent all their time worrying about it, passing around petitions and so on, I never had time for that Greenpeace, Save the Manatee, PETA garbage. Tree huggers and Democrats and Hare Krishna and so-called scientists. Where did all of their belly aching get us? Did it make us one bit more prepared? The climate has been changing since before Jesus. You know what I mean. There were ice ages before, and there will be other ones later. Continents shift, and there's plate tectonics. Volcanoes blow, and people die, and there are tornadoes, and tsunamis, and forest fires, and microbursts, and outbreaks of disease. Plague, cholera, yellow fever, swine flu. Welcome to planet Earth, where shit happens. It's not like any of this is actually our fault. Fate plays spin the bottle. Would you blame the dinosaurs for dying out?
I wake to the sound of squeaky wheels and a kind of struggling noise. I pull open the heavy church doors to see a teenage boy pushing a Walmart shopping cart up a hill. The boy is sort of holding back sobs, and his hair is all akimbo. He wears a Mickey Mouse sweatshirt. A card table is balanced across the shopping cart, and a body is wrapped in a Spider-Man blanket on the table. I know that this must be someone he loves. He pushes the cart over to an open place in the graveyard, unstraps and lifts the body off into a patch of dry ground. He removes a shovel from the cart, and he begins to dig. I walk towards him. I know what he is doing, and I can help him with this task.